when it comes to marriage, according to the fairy tales, they may have some trials as they get together, but then they get married and they all live happily ever after. But it doesn't work out like that for, well, more than most people. For all of us, in marriages, there will be difficult times. There will be tough seasons which can either draw us closer together or pull us apart. Joining me on the program now, Executive Director of FamilyLife in New Zealand, Wynand Jacobs. Kia ora, good morning.
Kia ora, Andrew.
It would be nice to think that the happy ever after thing did work, but look, if we read the fine print, it's all there, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness or in health. We're taking it warts and all, aren't we?
Well, that's the thing. We say those words too easily, but often what we really mean is for better and not the for worse part.
Yeah.
For health and not necessarily the sickness part. But hey, this is part and parcel of doing life together. And this is what I love about marriage. It's actually not a contractual relationship, but it's a covenantal one.
Yeah.
Meaning I'm committing to do this. I'm committing to this person. So let's just face it, whatever the reason, difficulties and challenges will arise. These difficulties might be because of something you did. It might be because of something you didn't do, or it might just be something completely out of your control. What I want us to sort of chat about a little bit today is what do we do, and how can we actually face these difficulties better? I love watching the show, and actually, so do our kids. MasterChef. We watch the one MasterChef Junior. Have you seen that, Andrew?
Not my vibe, but I understand people love this stuff. And hey, good to have a show that you can watch together as a family.
That's right. One of my sort of motives behind this is to encourage my kids to get involved in the kitchen somehow. Just cultivate some interest there.
Yeah.
But I find it interesting. You put people in this environment. Making a meal, but then the pressure gets on because it's one thing making a meal with, you're limited to a certain amount of ingredients and all that, and you need to come up with something spectacular. But then the time limit. Every time I look at one of those episodes, it's just, I get nervous just watching them, racing against the clock.
Yeah.
And life will bring about those pressure situations, right? But what we actually need to do in that pressure situation is not turn on each other. And it's so telling in these team events that they do together, where the teams that win are the teams that can actually slow down and calm down when the pressure is on. And it's the same in our marriages. Like, our marriage will actually grow stronger when we go through a difficult season. The difficult seasons we walk through together has a way of actually squeezing us. And I love this saying, if you squeeze an orange, what should come out should not be apple juice.
No.
So the question I want to pose to our listeners today is, if you squeeze a Christian, why is it that sometimes everything but Christ comes out?
Wow.
And let's just put a little bit of perspective around difficult seasons for a moment. If we, as believers, truly believe what the Lord has said. In John 13, Jesus talks to his disciples and he says, I tell you the truth, whoever accepts anyone I send accepts me, and whoever accepts me accepts the one who sent me. And then he said, no servant is greater than its master. And he goes on to say, if the world hated me, know that they will hate you.
Yeah.
So there's this sense of, Jesus experienced suffering, and we think we won't. Now, there's different aspects to it. There's different layers. There's another scripture in John 16 where he said, I've told you these things so that in me you may have perfect peace.
Yeah.
In the world you will have tribulations and distress and suffering. It's almost like a guarantee. Hey, here you go. This is one thing I can guarantee you will have.
Yeah.
Distress and tribulation and suffering. But then he also says, be courageous, be confident, be undaunted, and be filled with joy. And I'm reading from the Amplified translation. Because I have overcome the world. My conquest is accomplished and my victory is abiding. And this is what I want to sort of draw our attention to today, is like, we often try to avoid challenging situations. We think that if we can just get through this situation, things will be better.
Yeah.
And yes, maybe they will on the surface level. But what if I can just grow through this situation? What if our marriage was actually being forged in the fire of the trials and the challenges that we're going through right now?
Mm.
And this is the opportunity that we have. I'm not saying it's easy, but the Lord has also promised us that we will never be challenged beyond our capabilities.
Yeah.
And so, whatever the challenge you're walking through right now, may I encourage the listeners to just do a few things. Like, it's one of the things that I usually do to take me through a difficult season is I get an anthem, I get a song that can take me through something that anchors my heart, saying, "We'll get through this."
Okay.
It helps me slow down. It helps me maintain peace. Have you had one of those songs, Andrew?
Eye of the Tiger. You don't even need to ask. That's it. Any of the Rocky themes, it's okay. I'm joking on this one, but
That's all right.
but actually, I think one of the really important things here, especially because I mean, let's get specific about this. If we're dealing with issues and crises, because it's all very well to go, hey. There's this thing that's happening in the world that's attacking me, or I'm being persecuted in this way. But sometimes the attack seems internal, or we turn on each other. If it's something like addiction or infidelity, or even difficulty conceiving, turning on each other and going, hey, this problem that we now have is the fault of the person that I married, that's where things really come unglued, right?
It is. It is. And I love that you use the word unglued, because when I glue something together in carpentry, that bond is actually stronger than the wood itself.
Yeah.
So when you try and break it apart, you don't actually break the glue, you break a piece of the wood.
Yeah, totally.
And you hurt. And I love, this is from the movie Fireproof, either one or both of them.
Mm.
So if we forget that the goal is oneness, we turn on one another and we make our spouse the enemy.
Yeah.
But if we can actually remember in those difficult seasons, no matter who caused the season, no matter why we're in the season, sure, we can learn from our mistakes. But in that season, the goal is, hey, we're in this together.
Yeah.
We're going to get through this together. But we need to do this with a lot of grace for one another and grace for ourselves. And then also living in day tight compartments. So it can all feel too overwhelming when you're sort of stuck in the middle of this difficult, treacherous journey.
Yeah.
And that's the point. The point is, do not try and walk out the whole journey in your head when in the middle of this difficulty.
Yeah.
Take stock of the situation, look at the magnitude of the situation, but then draw close, like bring it closer and live in that day tight compartments. Find what you can be grateful for each day. Spend time in the presence of Jesus, cultivating your relationship with him, because he promises you peace and he promises you joy, not in the absence of difficulty, but in the middle of it. So I know that there are listeners here right now going through some tough stuff,
Yeah.
whether internally, whether externally. And my encouragement would just be ruthless about making that time to become quiet,
Yeah.
about living one day at a time in the season, and you'll get through it.
From my perspective on this one, and look, I know different people are in different circumstances, but honestly, I am so grateful that I have a marriage partner, that I have a life partner who is able to support me through stuff. But being in that space, we're able to support each other rather than pull each other down. And there's all sorts of crises that we face as a couple. But from my point of view, no crisis is bigger than the crisis of a marriage that is falling apart. So I suppose I make that my priority and say, hey, if we can stick together, if we can be on the same page, if we can be on the same team on this one, that really increases the odds that we're going to be able to beat whatever challenge comes our way. If we're
That's
divided, right, there's no hope, really.
Yep. Yep. And you hit the nail on the head. And that's why one of the things I said was around having grace for one another.
Yeah.
Because you will be tempted to not, I guess, uphold one another in the season or blame each other. And sometimes rightfully so. But let's have more grace than necessary for ourselves and for our spouse. And let's just reframe that situation and say, hey, what's more important here is that we, as in you and me, as a married couple, get through this together.
Yeah.
So if we lose ourselves in this process, we just need to stop, reframe, and say, hang on a minute. We need a win-win situation, not win-lose. It's not about who's to blame.
Yeah.
It's about how are we going to get through this together. So may you be encouraged by that, whatever it is that you're carrying right now. Be encouraged that you can do it together. Be encouraged that you will be strengthened and grow stronger in your relationship together. Yep. And believe it or not, you might actually look back at the season, and even though you say, I never want to have it over again, you'd say, I'm grateful for that season because of what it produced in me. And those are the stuff that old love is made of. You know, a lot of people say there's nothing as good as young love. Well, I think that's somewhat true, but I think there's nothing as beautiful as old love.
Yeah.
You know, the love that stood the test of time. Be encouraged. Yeah. And that's the goal.
You've got some wrinkles. You've learned some lessons, and actually built some resilience and stamina into your marriage because of the things that you have faced together. Wynand, this is so important, so critical, and I know there'll be many people listening at the moment who are going, yeah, I need to do that for myself, for my own marriage, to perhaps have a look at my priorities and stop doing the blaming game. If people wanted to find out more about some of these issues and some of the resources that you guys offer at Family Life, how do they connect? How do they get some of the tools and inspiration they need to move forward?
Yeah, hop on over to familylife.nz. Unfortunately, our upcoming weekend, remember, is all sold out.
Yeah.
But dates for next year will be up soon. And so if that's something you want to do, get in and invest to making a great marriage your reality.
I would certainly encourage people to do that. FamilyLife.nz is the place to go. Thank you so much for what you do. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Andrew.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.